The night was colder than any night Lyra had ever known. The wind cut through the empty ruins of the planet like knives. Dust and ash swirled in the air, coating her bare feet with gray powder. Beside her, Vaya stumbled, her thin arms wrapped around her chest. Neither of them had clothes. Only scraps of cloth they had found on the road. They had no food, no shelter, and no hope. Once, this place had been a city. Tall towers had touched the clouds, streets had been full of voices. Now, everything was broken. The war had burned it. All the two girls had wandered for days, searching for anything that could keep them alive. Every sound in the distance made them stop and listen. Sometimes it was only the wind. Sometimes it was something worse. Lyra tried to stay strong. She was older by 2 years. And Via looked to her for every decision. But she was tired. Her legs ached. Her lips were cracked. Every step felt heavier than the last. The planet's 2 moons hung in the sky, cold. And far away, the dim light they gave made the shadows stretch across the broken ground. "Keep walking," Lyra whispered. Her voice was almost lost in the wind. Via nodded, though her eyes were dull with exhaustion. They had seen what happened to those who stopped. The cold would take them within hours, or the scavengers would find them ahead. Something glimmered in the distance. At first, Lyra thought it was her eyes playing tricks on her, but the light stayed. It was small, golden, and flickering. Not like the cold silver light of the moons. It looked warm. It looked alive. She pointed. "Look," she said. Vaya lifted her head and gasped. They both started moving faster. Their hearts beat harder in their chests. Maybe it was a fire. Maybe it was people. People meant danger. But also food, shelter, maybe safety. The ground was rough. Full of cracks from the old bombings, the girls had to step carefully to avoid falling. They climbed over a collapsed wall. The light grew brighter. It was definitely not a star. It was too close, too steady. Now they could hear something too, a faint hum. Like the sound of a machine, Lyra slowed down. Her instincts told her to be careful. Many times before, they had walked into traps. Once, they had followed a light and found a group of raiders. She still remembered how one of them had tried to grab Vaya. They had run until their lungs burned. This time, she would not rush in. They crouched behind a broken pillar, peeking out. They saw it, a small ship, half buried in the dirt. Its silver body was dented and scorched, a soft yellow. Light glowed from a panel near the entrance. The hum came from inside, a sign of working power. Vaya's eyes were wide. "A ship," she whispered. Lyra nodded. If there was a ship, there might be a pilot. If there was a pilot, maybe they had food. Maybe they could take them away from this dead place. But humans, if it was a human, were unpredictable. The stories they had heard said humans could be both saviors and destroyers. Some humans helped alien children. Others sold them to slavers. Lyra's stomach twisted with fear. The wind howled again. Stronger now, her skin burned from the cold. She looked at Vaya. Her lips were turning blue. If they stayed outside any longer, they would not survive the night. She made a choice. "We go," she said. Her voice was firm. Vaya nodded without question. Trust between them was the only thing left unbroken. They stepped out from behind. The pillar, the dirt crunched under their feet. The sound seemed loud in the silent night. Lyra's eyes never left the glowing light on the ship. Step by step, they moved closer. Her heart was pounding. She didn't know if it was from hope or fear. As they reached the edge of the ship's shadow, a sudden noise made them freeze. A hiss, like air escaping. A panel on the side shifted, slowly opening. Warm light spilled out into the cold darkness. The girls stared, eyes wide. A tall figure stepped out. The shape was unlike any alien they had seen. Broad shoulders, straight posture. The figure turned its head, and the light revealed a human face. The man's eyes locked on them instantly. his expression unreadable. He held something in his hands, a weapon. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. Via trembled beside her. The man raised the weapon slightly. The girls didn't move. Time seemed to slow. The only sound was the wind and the faint hum of the ship. Then, without warning, the man lowered the weapon. His voice was deep, and though the words were strange, his tone was softer now. He said something neither of them understood, but they could feel it. The sound was not a threat. The cold night seemed a little less deadly, and for the first time in many days. The light ahead felt like it might not be a trap. The human stood in the doorway of the ship. His shadow stretched across the cold dirt. The golden light behind him made the air shimmer with warmth. But in his hands, the weapon gleamed. Lyra felt her heart beat in her ears. She didn't blink. Beside her, Via stayed still, her breathing shallow. The man's eyes studied them, not quickly, slowly, like he was trying to understand what he was seeing. The wind pulled at Lyra's hair, but she didn't dare brush it from her face. Any sudden move could make him fire. His clothes were strange, thick fabric. A dark jacket with strange symbols on the sleeve, shiny plates on the chest armor. Maybe Lyra had never seen anything like it. Vea's gaze darted to his boots, heavy, reinforced, made for long travel. Everything about him said survivor. Everything about them said prey. The man spoke again. His voice rolled through the night. They didn't understand the words. But there was no sharpness in his tone, no bite, no mockery. Only a question. Maybe Lyra's mind raced. If he was a soldier, he could arrest them. If he was a scavenger, he could trade them for fuel. If he was lost like them, maybe they could join him. The man lowered the weapon a little more. He used one hand to point toward the ship's entrance. The light spilling out looked even warmer now. Via took a small step forward. Lyra's hand shot out. Grabbing her wrist, they locked eyes. Lyra's look was clear. Wait. The man saw this and stopped moving. He looked at them for a moment longer. Then he crouched down, placing the weapon. Slowly on the ground, both his hands were now empty and open. It was a universal sign. I'm not going to hurt you. Lyra hesitated. Was this real? Or was it just a way to make them come closer? She remembered the raiders who had smiled before attacking. But she also remembered her mother saying that sometimes you had to take a risk to survive. The human reached to his belt, Lyra's body. Tensed again, he pulled out a small silver pack. When he tore it open, steam rose into the cold air. The smell reached them rich. Savory, warm. It was food, real food, not scraps, not spoiled things found in the ruins. Vea's stomach growled loud enough for all three to hear. The human's mouth curved into something, not quite a smile, but close. He set the food on the ground in front of him. Then he stepped back. It was an invitation and a test. The girls looked at each other. Via's eyes were pleading now. Lyra took a deep breath, step by step. She led them forward. Her feet crunched in the dirt. The man stayed perfectly still. The hum of the ship grew louder. The air around the door felt warm against their frozen skin. When they reached the food, Lyra crouched. Her fingers hovered over it for a moment. The human didn't move. Finally, she grabbed it and tore it in half. She gave one piece to Vea and kept one for herself. The first bite burned her tongue, but it was the best pain she had ever felt. Warmth spread from her mouth to her chest. Her hands stopped shaking. The human watched them finish every crumb. Then he said something again. This time, his tone was different, lower, almost gentle. He stepped aside, making the doorway clear. His hand gestured toward the light inside. It was the kind of gesture that said, "Come in." Lyra's instincts screamed to things at once. Danger and safety. She didn't know which to believe. Via, still chewing the last bite, stepped closer to the door. The heat spilling from the ship touched her skin like sunlight. Her eyes closed for just a second. That second was enough for Lyra to see. If they turned back now, Vea would not survive another night outside. Lyra took her hand. She looked up at the human. His eyes didn't look cruel. They looked tired, like someone who had seen too much. He said a few more words, slow this time. One word sounded like home. She didn't know if she was imagining it. Her throat felt dry. She gave the smallest nod. The man stepped back into the ship. The girls followed as soon as they crossed the doorway. A soft hiss closed the panel behind them. The hum grew deeper. The air was thick with warmth and the smell of strange oils. For the first time in weeks, Lyra's shoulders relaxed, just a little. Vea's lips curved into the faintest smile. The human picked up his weapon from the floor, but he didn't raise it. Instead, he hung it on the wall. Then he pointed down the corridor. Whatever lay ahead, it would change their lives forever. Asterisk. The corridor inside the ship was narrow. Metal walls hummed softly. Dim lights ran along the ceiling, glowing in a gentle gold instead of harsh white for the girls. Every step felt like walking deeper into a place they didn't belong. The human walked ahead. His boots rang against the metal floor with a steady rhythm. Every sound seemed loud in the silence. Lyra's eyes darted from wall to wall. Pipes, wires, small blinking lights. It all felt alive. Vea reached out once to touch a glowing panel. But Lyra pulled her hand back quickly. They couldn't risk angering him after a short walk. The man stopped. He turned to face them, then pointed at a small room to the side. The door slid open with a whisper. Inside was something neither of them had seen in months: a real bed, two of them, and a heater in the corner glowing with steady warmth. Lyra froze. This was too much. Food was one thing. Warmth was another. But a room? That felt like a promise, and promises were dangerous. The man stepped aside so they could enter. He didn't push, didn't speak too quickly, just waited. His eyes flickered between the two girls. Then he walked over to the heater and adjusted. A dial warm air flowed out in a gentle stream. The sudden comfort made Vea take an involuntary step forward. Her bare toes touched the warm floor. Her face softened. Almost forgetting the cold night outside, the man reached into a storage bin and pulled out two folded bundles. He set them on the bed nearest the heater. When he opened one, it revealed soft, thick clothes, a shirt, pants, socks, all clean, all warm. He said a few words, slow and careful, then patted the clothes. The meaning was clear. For you, Veas. Hands twitched toward them. But again she looked to Lyra. Lyra's jaw was tight. She didn't trust gifts. Gifts often had prices. Prices they couldn't afford. The man seemed to read the hesitation. He crouched down so he was at eye level with them. Then he tapped his own chest. "Daniel," he said. His voice was calm. He pointed to Lyra, his eyebrows lifting. Lyra didn't answer at first. But Daniel waited. Finally, she placed a hand on her chest. "Lyra," she said. Her voice was quiet but steady. Daniel gave the smallest nod. Then he looked to Vea. She hesitated. Then whispered, "Vea." Something in Daniel's expression changed. The lines on his face softened. He repeated their names slowly, like he was making a promise to remember them. He stood again and pointed to the heater. Then to the clothes. Then he held both hands out, palms open. "Both of you. Come home," he said. The words were strange, but the tone, the way his voice dropped, it made them both look at him with surprise. They didn't understand every word, but home. That word sounded the same in any language. Lyra's heart twisted. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let Vea put on those clothes and sit in the heat. But what if this was a cage? What if he locked them inside? She had seen humans trade alien children for fuel. She had seen kindness turn into cruelty overnight. Daniel stepped back, giving them space. He walked to the doorway and leaned against the wall. He didn't watch them like a guard, more like someone waiting for a decision he couldn't make for them. Vea moved first. She stepped toward the bed. Her hand touched the fabric of the shirt. It was softer than anything she had worn since the war began. Her eyes glistened. She looked back at Lyra. Her silent plea was louder than any words. Please. Lyra's stomach ached, not from hunger now, but from the weight of the choice. Her mind replayed the cold night outside, the emptiness, the way Vea's lips had turned blue. If they went back out, they wouldn't last another day. That truth was a heavy one. It crushed the last bit of resistance she had. She gave a slow nod. Vea's shoulders dropped with relief. She grabbed the clothes and hugged them to her chest. Daniel didn't move closer, didn't speak, but something in his eyes said he understood. When Vea slipped into the warm clothes, she let out a sound Lyra hadn't heard in a long time. A small laugh. Lyra followed, pulling the soft shirt over her head. The heater's air wrapped around her like a blanket. She didn't realize how much she had been shivering until it stopped. Daniel finally stepped away from the wall. He gave a short nod, then he motioned for them to follow. There was more to see, more to decide, as they stepped back into the corridor. Lyra realized something for the first time in weeks. Her fear wasn't the only thing she felt. There was something else, small, fragile, but there. Hope. The ship's corridor seemed longer than the streets of the ruined city they had left behind. The hum under their feet felt alive. Lyra had never been inside something that moved without walking. Vea's wide eyes darted from wall to wall. Drinking in every detail, Daniel walked ahead at a steady pace. Sometimes he glanced back to make sure they followed. He didn't rush them, but his movements were purposeful, like someone with a destination in mind. They passed doors that slid open and closed with a whisper. Each one revealed something strange. A room full of screens that glowed with maps and lines. A chamber where water shimmered inside a tall glass tank. A narrow space filled with strange suits hanging on hooks. Every smell, every sound, every flash of light was new to the girls. Vea slowed as they entered a wider passage. Her gaze was pulled toward a large circular window. When she reached it, she froze. Her mouth opened slightly. Lyra stepped up beside her and forgot to breathe. The world outside was black. Not the black of night, but the endless black of space. Stars burned like cold fire. Huge clouds of blue and gold gas swirled in the distance. Below them, the broken planet they had just left looked small and silent, its surface scarred and gray. From here, it seemed almost peaceful. But Lyra knew the truth hiding in those shadows. Vea placed both hands on the glass. Her reflection looked fragile against the vast universe. Daniel came to stand beside them. He said something in his language. The girls didn't understand the words, but the way he spoke, quiet, slow, made them feel the weight of what they were seeing. Then the ship shuddered. A low alarm beeped once. Daniel's eyes sharpened. He motioned for them to follow quickly. The warmth of wonder faded. Lyra felt the old, familiar tension return to her chest. They reached a room filled with glowing panels. Daniel sat in a chair that swiveled toward a wide view screen. The image showed their ship from above and behind it, far in the distance. 2 red dots moved slowly toward them. Lyra frowned. She didn't know what the dots meant. But Daniel's jaw tightened. He tapped the screen, zooming in. The red dots became shapes, small ships, sharp and insect-like. They moved in a hunting pattern. Lyra had seen such ships before in the ruins. Pirates, scavengers, worse. Daniel spoke into a small device on his wrist. His tone was low, but urgent. Lights along the walls shifted from gold to pale blue. The hum of the engines grew louder. The girls clung to the back of his chair. The floor vibrated under them. The view outside the window began to change. Stars stretched into thin lines. The Black around them seemed to bend. It felt like falling without moving. Via gasped and grabbed Liara's hand. Daniel glanced at them once. His voice softened for just a moment, a sound that felt like reassurance. Even if they didn't understand it, then a sharp, beeping cut. Through the air, the red shapes were closer now. They had followed through the void. Lyra's mind raced. Why? What could they possibly want with 2 starving alien girls and 1 lone human? Daniel's hands flew over the controls. The ship tilted. The stars outside swung in dizzying arcs. Lyra's legs trembled. Via shut her eyes against the motion. The hum deepened into a roar. Something thudded against the hull, a blast from the pursuers. Daniel barked a short order at them, then pointed to 2 seats against the wall. Thick straps hung from the sides. He motioned sharply. Sit. Lyra didn't argue. She pushed Via into one seat and fastened the straps. Then she pulled her own across her chest. The floor tilted again as the ship banked sharply. Through the window, the chasing ships darted like dark birds. Their weapons flashed, lights streaked past. Daniel pulled the controls hard. The ship dipped into the shadow of a large asteroid. For a moment, everything went quiet. The girls held their breath. Daniel's eyes stayed on the screen. The enemy ship slowed, scanning the dark. Then Daniel pressed a small red switch. The ship lunged forward. Stars twisted and blurred. The asteroid's shadow fell away. The pursuing ships vanished. From the view, only the endless black and the scattered light of stars remained. The hum softened again. Daniel let out a slow breath. He turned to look at the girls. Via's eyes were still shut tight. Lyra's hands gripped the straps so hard her knuckles were white. Daniel said something quiet. It almost sounded like, safe now. He unbuckled and motioned for them to follow. As they walked back toward the warmer corridors, the girls exchanged a glance. Neither spoke, but both knew the same truth. They were moving farther from the life they had known and deeper into something unknown. The journey had only begun. The calm didn't last. It never did. Only minutes after Daniel had slowed the ship. The alarm returned. This time it was louder, sharper. A flashing red light washed the control room in urgent color. Daniel's head snapped toward the main screen. 2 blips appeared again. The same hunting ships, only now they were closer. Much closer. Lyra's breath caught. She thought they had escaped, but the enemy had found them again. They weren't wandering. They were tracking. Daniel's fingers flew over the controls. A deep, heavy sound pulsed through the floor. The ship leaped forward. Stars became streaks once more. But the blips on the radar moved faster. Via stood frozen at the doorway to the cockpit, her eyes locked on the red dots. She didn't understand the controls. She didn't need to. The speed of those dots told her one thing. They were not going to stop. Daniel barked something at the girls and pointed to the wall seats. They didn't argue. Lyra grabbed Vea's wrist and pulled her down. The straps were cold and rough. The metal buckles clicked into place. Her hands shook as she fastened them. The enemy ships closed in. The first shot came without warning. A beam of bright light ripped past the front window. The sound that followed was like metal screaming. The hull shuddered. Lyra's teeth clacked together from the impact. Daniel pulled hard on the controls. The ship rolled sideways. The stars outside spun. Vea gasped and squeezed her eyes shut. But another beam of light lit the inside of her eyelids red. Then came a louder impact. A deep thud against the rear of the ship. The force pushed them forward in their seats. Sparks showered from a panel near the ceiling. The air smelled faintly burnt. Daniel cursed under his breath and slammed a hand on the console. A small screen flickered to life beside him. It showed the back of the ship one of the enemy craft had fired a hook-like device. It was stuck to the hull. A cable glowed as it began to pull them back. Lyra didn't know much about ships, but she knew what that meant. "They're trying to take us," she whispered. Via gripped her arm tighter. Daniel's hand moved to a control on his left. A panel opened, revealing a row of red-tipped levers. He pulled one hard. Somewhere outside, there was a muffled explosion. The screen showed the hook, tearing free. Pieces of it spun away into the void. The enemy ships spread apart now. One moved above, one stayed behind. Daniel tilted the ship sharply. Down. Gravity pushed the girls into their seats. The stars vanished, replaced by a huge, dark shape, an asteroid field. Massive rocks drifted through the blackness. Some turned slowly, glinting with reflected starlight. Others were jagged shadows that could rip a ship apart. Daniel plunged into the field without hesitation. The ship weaved between stone giants. Some so close Lyra thought she could touch them through the window. The enemy followed. Their smaller ships moved like hunting. Birds, quick, precise, always in sight. Daniel's jaw was set. His eyes flicked from one screen to another. His hands never stopped moving. The ship twisted sharply left, then right. Each turn made the hull groan under the stress. One of the enemy ships miscalculated. It clipped an asteroid and spun wildly before vanishing behind the rocks. Vea let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. But the other ship stayed on them. Its weapons fired again. A bolt grazed their wing. The ship jolted hard, alarms screaming in response. Daniel slammed a button. A panel of the dashboard slid open to reveal a row of small metallic spheres. He twisted a knob. And through the side window, the girls saw them release into space. The spheres glowed bright red. Moments later, they exploded, not in fire, but in clouds of shining particles. The enemy ship shot through them and instantly slowed. Its engines coughed blue sparks. Daniel didn't wait. He pushed the ship forward with a roar of the engines. The asteroid field fell away behind them. The stars opened up ahead like an endless road for a long moment. The only sounds were the hum of the engines and the girls' heavy breathing. Daniel checked the screens again. The radar showed only their ship, no red dots. He leaned back in his chair and rubbed his forehead. His breathing was steady, but his shoulders sagged, slowly. He turned to look at the girls. Via was still gripping her seatbelt. Lyra's hands were clenched into fists. Daniel's expression softened just a little. He spoke a short sentence. The tone told them enough, for now. They were safe, but Lyra's gaze drifted back to the window. The stars looked calm again, but she knew better. Somewhere out there, those hunters were still moving. Still watching, still waiting, and the chase was not over. The stars outside the window began to change. At first, to a faint blue glow in the distance. Then, as the ship moved closer, the glow became a sphere, blue and green, streaked with white clouds that swirled slowly. It looked alive. It looked like hope. Vea pressed her face to the glass. Her breath fogged the surface. "What is that?" She whispered in her own language. Lyra didn't answer. She didn't have the words. But she knew this was where Daniel was taking them. Daniel's voice came from the front. He said something neither of them understood, but when he glanced back, his eyes were softer than before. The kind of softness that told them, "You're almost there." The blue world grew larger until it filled the entire view. Vast oceans glittered under the sunlight. Green lands stretched across the curves of the planet, and everywhere, white clouds drifted like gentle shadows. The ship's hum lowered. The air felt warmer through the windows. The stars faded into pale blue sky. They were falling now, not the dangerous fall of an attack, but a smooth, controlled descent. The first thing the girls saw on the surface was color, not the gray dust of their old world, not the black emptiness of space, but vibrant greens, deep blues, and the gold of sunlight touching the earth. The ship slowed over a wide forest. The trees were tall, their tops swaying in a soft wind. Between them, bright rivers curved like silver threads. Birds, creatures they had never seen, darted through the air in flashes of color. Daniel guided the ship toward a clearing. It landed with a low hiss. The hum of the engines faded, replaced by the sound of leaves moving. The air was different here, warmer, cleaner. It smelled of wet earth and something sweet. The door opened, a rush of fresh air poured inside. The girls stepped forward hesitantly. The ground beneath them was soft, grass bent under their bare feet, cool and alive. Vea crouched and touched it with both hands. Her fingers sank into the green blades. She laughed, a small, surprised sound. Lyra knelt beside her, rubbing the grass between her palms. It felt strange and gentle at the same time. Daniel stepped past them and took a deep breath. His posture relaxed. Here, he seemed different. Lighter somehow, he motioned for them to follow. A narrow path wound through the trees. Sunlight broke through in patches, painting the ground with shifting gold. The sounds were endless. The wind rustling leaves, birds singing, the distant splash of water. Every step took them farther from the silence of space and the cold emptiness of their ruined home. After a short walk, they reached a small structure hidden among the trees. It was built of smooth wood and stone. Smoke curled gently from a thin chimney. The door was open. Daniel stepped inside first. The girls followed. The inside was warm, not from machines, but from a real fire. A fireplace crackled in the corner. The air smelled faintly of bread. There were shelves along the walls, books, small objects, and plants in clay pots. Everything looked worn but cared for. Daniel walked to a cupboard and pulled out a loaf of bread. He sliced it carefully. The sound of the crust breaking was sharp in the quiet room. He set to pieces on a plate and pushed them toward the girls. They didn't wait this time. The bread was soft and warm. The taste was simple but rich. It filled their mouths with comfort. When they finished, Daniel pointed toward a door at the back. Inside was a small room with 2 beds covered in thick blankets. A window looked out into the forest. The sunlight there made the room glow. Vea sat on one bed. Her fingers traced the stitching on the blanket. She had never touched something so soft. Lyra stood at the window, outside. A deer moved quietly through the grass. It lifted its head, looked toward her, and then walked away. Daniel leaned against the doorway, watching them. For a moment, his eyes seemed far away, as if he was remembering something from long ago. Then, he said a few words softly. They didn't understand, but the tone was the same as when he had said, "Come home," back on the ship. For the first time in weeks, the girls' bodies stopped holding the constant tension of survival. The air here was gentle. The sounds were gentle. The man was, at least for now, gentle. But even as she lay down on the bed, Lyra's mind stayed alert. Safe places could turn dangerous quickly. Trust was something she had learned to give slowly. She would watch, she would wait. But tonight, she would let Vea sleep without fear. The forest outside whispered with the wind, and the fire in the other room burned steady. They had reached a safe haven, but safety, Lyra knew, was never permanent. The first morning in the safe house began with sunlight. It poured through the window in long golden beams. Dust particles drifted lazily in the air. Vea stirred under the blanket, her breathing deep and even. She hadn't slept like this in years. Lyra was already awake. She sat on the edge of her bed, her bare feet resting on the soft rug. For a while, she simply listened. Birdsong outside. The quiet pop of the fire still burning in the other room. No alarms, no screams, no wind howling through empty ruins. Daniel appeared in the doorway. He didn't speak at first, just held out 2 steaming cups. The smell was warm and sweet. The girls took them carefully. The liquid was strange, but comforting. It slid down their throats and spread heat through their chests. After they drank, Daniel gestured for them to follow him outside. The forest was alive with movement. A small stream ran nearby, its surface. Glittering in the sunlight, the air smelled of pine and damp earth for the first time. Via didn't cling to Lyra's arm. She stepped ahead on the path, touching the leaves. Her laughter was quiet, but real. Daniel stopped near a tall tree. A rope hung from one of its branches. Attached to the rope was a simple wooden swing. He gestured toward it. Vea's eyes widened. She glanced at Lyra. When Lyra nodded, Vea sat down. Daniel pushed gently. The swing moved forward and back. Vea's hair caught the sunlight as she laughed again, louder this time. It was such a small thing, a swing, a laugh, but Lyra felt something shift inside her. It was the first time she had seen her sister smile without fear. Later, Daniel led them farther along the path. They reached a clearing with rows of plants growing in. Neat lines. Green leaves, bright vegetables, flowers that swayed in the wind. Daniel knelt and pulled a carrot from the soil. He brushed off the dirt and held it out. Vea bit into it, her face lighting up at the fresh taste. Lyra followed. The crunch was crisp, the flavor sweet. It was nothing like the stale rations they had once scavenged. Over the next few days, the girls learned the rhythms of the place. Mornings began with food and walks in the forest. Afternoons were spent helping Daniel tend the plants or carry wood. At night, they sat near the fire. Daniel sometimes pointed at things and said their names slowly. They repeated them, laughing at their mistakes. A shared language began to grow. Not perfect, but enough to understand the most important things. Still, Lyra's guard never fully dropped. One night, after Vea had fallen asleep, she stepped outside alone. The forest was calm, the air cool, but above, the sky glittered with stars. Somewhere out there, she knew, the hunters still searched. She wrapped her arms around herself. If they ever found this place, she would be ready. Daniel found her there. He didn't try to send her back inside. Instead, he stood beside her. For a while, they watched the sky in silence. Then he pointed upward. He said something slowly. She didn't understand the whole sentence, but she caught one word: safe. The way he said it made her want to believe it. The next morning, Daniel placed 2 folded pieces of cloth on the table. Not blankets this time, clothing made to fit them properly. Sturdy enough for travel. He spoke, his voice calm from the gestures. Lyra understood. One day soon, they would go beyond the forest to see more of this new world. Vea clapped. Her hands at the thought. Lyra stayed quiet. Part of her feared leaving the safety of the house. But another part, the part that had been silent for so long, felt the pull of curiosity. That afternoon, they sat outside together. Daniel carving something from a block of wood, the girls weaving flowers into loops. The air was soft, the light gentle, and for the first time, Lyra realized she wasn't thinking about the next meal. She wasn't listening for distant footsteps. She was simply here, living. When the sun began to set, the sky turned gold and then deep purple. The forest glowed in the fading light. Via leaned against Lyra's shoulder. Daniel set down his carving, a small wooden bird, and placed it in Liar's hands. She turned it over slowly. It was simple, but the details were careful. She looked up at him. He gave a small nod. A gift, not a trade, not a trick. That night, as the fire crackled, Lyra lay in bed and thought about the word Daniel had said on the ship home. Back then, it had been just a sound. Now, it was something. She could feel warmth, safety, belonging. The journey that had begun in cold and darkness had brought them here. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, they would face it together. For the first time in their lives, Lyra and Vea had more than survival. They had a future, and for the first time, they had hope.